wanted to share some thoughts about the recently concluded G20 summit in India. And there was a, a communique that was released at the end of the summit, which essentially omitted the mention of the war in Ukraine, omitted blaming any country for the war, specifically Russia. And that was hailed as a victory of sorts by the the Sherpas, as they are called, um, of the different countries who are part of the G20, and it was hailed as the economic issues that are important to the global South taking precedence over the specific issues of a country like Ukraine. So essentially, this new world order that we're seeing, um, uh, it does not matter if a majority of the population of a country in the middle of Europe has had to flee, or everyday missile attacks and drone attacks are still decimating many cities, impacting and killing people, children, and overall heaping misery on the people of Ukraine and through a blatant act of invasion. Um, Also, a lot of these G20 leaders have obviously forgotten conveniently about the Budapest Accord, in which Ukraine decided to give up nuclear weapons in exchange for security guarantees from from the US and certain European nations. And obviously now there is so much talk of even whether to support Ukraine with further arms aid, etc. People growing impatient supposedly about their slow pace of the retaking land. But the G20 also struck me as reaching consensus by those who were absent. So the Chinese premier was absent from the G20, and obviously Vladimir Putin was also absent from G20, and it sort of reminded Putin and Russia's context reminded me of Joachim von Ribbentrop, who was Hitler's foreign minister and frequented Western capitals in the 1938s, 1939s, even after the Kristallnacht and after many of the laws that were passed through 1933 onwards by Nazi Germany. And Sergei Lavrov being presented at G20 evokes for me similar memories that essentially, as if this was Joachim von Ribbentrop attending a summit of nations, and whatever atrocities are being done by that nation doesn't really matter to the gathered countries, or an inconvenient truth that can be sort of touched upon in the communique and waxed over for broader, more economic concerns. This is also in the context of member G20 countries where, for example, Tibet is being ethnically cleansed and exterminated, the people of Tibet, of their culture, of their way of life, and the population being replaced. And there is obviously remotely no mention of that, or what's happened in Hong Kong, or what's happening with broadly with human rights and the rights of people across many places in the world where we see things are going rapidly backwards. In the name of consensus and economic sort of progress, supposedly, all of the G20 comes out with a communique, which essentially is the lowest common denominator and how of what is acceptable to all the countries. Now, if this is the lowest common denominator, then essentially what more are we willing to accept if millions are marched into a concentration camp? And there are sort of examples of that also in amongst some of the member countries of G20. Just look at the Uyghur people who are in retraining camps, as they're called. Um, and what else will we accept in the name of not disturbing the status quo? In many ways, with the hindsight of what happened during the Second World War, with the hindsight of knowing how the appeasement of the 1930s led to the Holocaust, are we repeating those same mistakes again in front of us and are in denial that that is not happening? So, or worse things are not going to happen. So these were my thoughts about the G20 communique that came out, and interested in understanding everyone else's thoughts in comments on this post. Thank you.